God was the mother whose child died. And here I had spent all of this time being academic and theoretical about the feminine side of God, that I completely missed that God was a mother whose child had died. That helped me get my faith back. But that wasn't particularly enough. I was also full of guilt. This was my body. This was my baby. What if I'd taken more vitamins? Did I get pregnant too quickly? Did I not get enough sleep? How could I have been so naive about pregnancy and loss? Life was so hard, I think one day I might have just stayed in bed, not gotten up, and been stuck there for a really long time. But I had a toddler. I had an active little boy named Daniel, and a toddler doesn't stop for anyone or anything. He needed his mom, and I just had to get up and feed him and play with him and take him to the park and care for him. Looking back now, I'm convinced that's what kept me going. I also know that I had the most amazing, patient, and caring social worker at the Royal Hospital for Women at Randwick, and she made such a real difference. She was practical and tangible in helping me work through my grief. She helped us get things organized, like Caroline's funeral, or finding a day of childcare a week close to home for Daniel so I could have a break. She was also a listening ear, and she was counsel for me in the months following Caroline's death. It did take some time to get my life back together, or at least that's what I thought I was doing, getting my life back to where it was. I tried and I tried to go back to my studies. The solitude of research is not a good distraction from grief. I found myself unable to get back into my PhD. In fact, I found myself uninterested in my PhD. We did have another baby, our beautiful son, Brendan. I held my breath for a lot of that pregnancy too, because all Caroline's autopsy really told us was that her condition was something that ran in sibling groups. It was a blessed relief to find that Brendan was healthy and he was fine. So there I was, 2 of the 4 children I thought I would have, an unfinished PhD and no real interest in finishing it, and no clear idea of what I was going to do with my life. I started to realize that Caroline had changed me forever. I could not put my life back to where it was before I had her. That life was gone. And although I had 2 wonderful and beautiful boys, I had no idea what my life was going to be like now. I started to dread meeting new people. They asked seemingly innocuous questions that always inevitably lead back to Caroline. Questions like, what do you do? I would say, I'm an at-home mother. They would say, how many children do you have? And then you get that pang of guilt and sorrow. Do you say 2 or do you say 3? And I would think, well, I'll keep it easy for them. I have two boys, I would say. And then they would say, don't you want to try for a girl? Sometimes people would say things like, what did you do before you had children? And I'd say, well, I was working on my PhD. And they would say, wow, are you going to finish it? No? Why not? It seemed like every day I faced the reality that the rest of the world was moving ahead. People had jobs and they had plans and they had things to do with their lives. And I couldn't even give birth to my own child, let alone find something meaningful to do. Don't get me wrong, I loved Daniel and Brendan, and being their mother was the only thing that appeared that I could do with any measure of success, or at least without failing at it. And we all muddled through those years. But it wasn't how I imagined my life. And then for a while, I did think life was just going to pass me by. Strangely enough, it was the September 11 attacks that kind of woke me up. I watched all of that sadness, and I thought, right, you have 2 beautiful children. They are healthy, they are happy. And yes, people are flying planes into buildings, terrible things are happening in the world. And you can either choose to become useful or not. You can either choose to make the world a better place or not. You can choose to get up and do something that leaves this world for your children in a better way than you found it. It was as if I realized that life really is short. It's unfair, sometimes it's devastating, and it's sad, but it's also joyful, and the world is still a good place. And I had to choose whether I was going to be a person that was trapped by that sadness and that grief, or someone who was going to make the world a better place to be. At that point, I realized Caroline really had changed me. She'd enlarged my life, my heart, and my sense of what really mattered. I didn't want to write a PhD anymore that might change perceptions and people's understanding of women's lives. I wanted to make a direct difference in people's lives. How I was going to do that, I had no real idea. All I know is that although Caroline never drew breath, she changed me. She brought a new dimension of love in our life, in my life, and she changed her mother's perspective forever. I kept thinking about that social worker who helped me. I wanted to do for others what that social worker had done for me. Help at the right time and make a real difference to people in need. Mind you, I did have no idea I was going to do that. I wish I could tell you that I woke up one day and said, I'll become a member of Parliament. That's how I can help people. And then it seamlessly happened. Real life, and especially politics, does not work that way. I thought about becoming a social worker myself. I looked into starting the coursework. I thought about becoming a police officer, and I made inquiries at the college in Goulburn. I did volunteer work for a number of local organizations, and I tried to accept that eventually, when the right opportunity comes along, that I would recognize it. Well, it did. In 2002, I had the opportunity to stand as the Labour MP for the seat of Heffron. It was, as Paul Keating says, being in the right place at the right time, and I jumped in with both feet. Now, being a member of Parliament's been more rewarding than I could have ever imagined. Being able to help someone in your local community solve a problem, being able to help a local community group solve a problem or overcome a difficulty is incredibly rewarding and satisfying. Some of the people who've come to my office for help throughout my career have faced and overcome challenges with courage and determination that I marvel at. I think of a single mom who's raising a severely disabled child, a mother escaping domestic violence with her 2 children, a woman who lost her home insurance because her husband was in jail. These are people whose stories will stay with me forever. I entered politics to help people, but what I found was something else happened when I entered politics. I discovered that Caroline's legacy wasn't finished, that she hadn't finished helping me. Politics isn't for the faint-hearted, and pretty much at no point in my political career has it been simple or easy. What I found was that there's a toughness that hadn't been part of me before. Things that I once would have found scary, or too hard, or too testing, no longer were. I realized I had a strength inside of me that only existed because of what I had experienced with Caroline. To put it most bluntly, when you've given birth to your baby and you know she won't survive it, when you buried her and when you grieved for her, a lot else in life pales in comparison. That's not to say everything is easy. That's not to say I'm stress-free or carefree. It is to say the context by which I judge whether something is hard, something that is so hard that I couldn't contemplate doing it, has changed entirely. It's true to say that I don't think I'd be in a position to run for Parliament if I hadn't given birth to Caroline. I suspect I would have stayed on the track I was on. But if I look back over the past 7 years in Parliament, I can see how being Caroline's mother has shaped me as a member of Parliament, as a minister, and as a premier. I believe it's made me more empathetic, as well as more courageous than I would have otherwise been. It's an amazing legacy for a baby girl who never breathed on her own. Life's full of unexpected twists and turns and interventions we didn't expect. And what the birth and the death of my daughter Caroline taught me is that grief and loss, though devastating, can open up a new dimension in one's life. Now, I tell you this story, not for pity, not for accolades. I tell it because Emma asked me to, and because I can only hope it gives recognition to women who experience pregnancy loss and stillbirth. Because it is still very much a silent loss, a silent grief, and an unspoken event. I started by telling you that people often say to me now, I don't know how you get out of bed every day. What I sometimes think when people say that to me now is that no one ever said that to me when getting out of bed every day was truly an impossible task. No one ever said to me then, mates, I really admire you for putting one foot in front of another, for getting out of bed and simply getting dressed today. I really admire the fact that you got yourself out of the house today and into public. And really admire the fact that you managed to get lunch on the table. So today, I encourage us all as a community to say to the mothers who know stillbirth and pregnancy loss, I know it's hard, but I admire you, and you are not alone. And good job for getting out of bed today. Thank you.